I'm so happy to have the chance to welcome you tonight to our beautiful campus. Before getting into the introduction of tonight's speaker, I want to acknowledge the tragic school shooting which took place in Nashville today and the lives that were lost there. Please join me in observing a brief period of silence for those who died and all of the lives which have been affected by this tragedy. Thank you. And now, we are so honored tonight to have the Reverend Dr. William Carl here to lead this year's Cummings Conversations on Faith, Learning, and Service. Bill comes to us with impeccable credentials in all of those areas. A man of faith, Bill has followed the call of God throughout his life. As a PK, that's preacher's kid, he never intended to make the ministry a career, but a religion class at the University of Tulsa made him rethink his planned major of music. Participating in college-sponsored pre-ministerial training, he began preaching in churches around his hometown of Tulsa at age 18 and knew then that preaching was what he was supposed to do. He went on to earn his bachelor's degree in religion and philosophy from Tulsa, then a master's of divinity from Louisville Presbyterian Theological Seminary, and a PhD in rhetoric and communication from the University of Pittsburgh. He was ordained in the Presbyterian Church USA in 1973, and since then has shared his faith in the pulpit, but also in books like The Lord's Prayer for Today, Preaching Christian Doctrine, and Dancing in Holy Places. Bill prioritizes learning. His academic degree suggests that he probably enjoyed the classroom, but his pursuit of knowledge didn't end with his PhD. It continued as he taught students at the University of Pittsburgh, Union Theological Seminary in Virginia, and Austin Theological Seminary in Texas. It continued as he agreed to help corporations develop and operate ethically. It continued as he was asked to deliver lectures at medical conferences on the connections between the brain, bodies, beliefs, and behaviors, requiring him to delve into extensive studies in cognitive neuroscience. That's the research which brings him here tonight. It has continued as he has written plays, screenplays, poems, lyrics, and novels. He has lectured at many schools and conferences in the U.S., including Princeton, Cornell, Boston University, and Carnegie Mellon. Internationally, he has spoken at Oxford and Cambridge and in Russia, South Africa, India, China, South Korea, Taiwan, Rwanda, and Canada. It's a lot of speaking. Finally, Bill is a man committed to service. He and his wife, Jane Alexander Carl, served a total of 27 years at First Presbyterian Church in Dallas, Texas, and Independent Presbyterian in Birmingham, Alabama. He served as president and professor of homiletics at Pittsburgh Theological Seminary from 2005 until 2015. In that decade of service, he not only expanded program offerings and led the largest capital campaign in the seminary's 220-year history, he guided an effort to recast the institution's mission and vision so that it reflected a more global focus. In the classroom, he helped to shape the next generation of pastor theologians. In retirement, Bill is striving to inspire and encourage creative people of all kinds through his non-traditional publishing company, LeConte Publishing. And although it involves service of a different kind, tennis is another way that he spends his time and keeps his body and mind in tip-top shape. I hear he's pretty good at tennis. With all that said, please help me extend a very warm Maryville College welcome to the Reverend Dr. William J. Carl as he comes to the podium to begin. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. So you're on? Can you all hear me just fine? Okay, everybody can hear me? Good. It's so wonderful to, let's see, we got an early one there. It's so wonderful to be here with you all. And I'm going to be talking about memory and all kinds of different things tonight, but because of memory, I just need to start with a story of, since I lived in Texas for 22 years, a story about a West Texas merchant who got religion and decided that he would memorize every verse of the Bible, which he did. And people came from miles around to hear him recite Scripture. And he could recite the appropriate Scripture for the appropriate occasion. A man came in to buy a present for his mother for Mother's Day, and everyone leaned forward to hear what he was going to say. And he said, Exodus 20:12, honor thy father and thy mother. And they were amazed at how he could do this. Kids came in to buy candy, and everyone would lead forward. Mark 10:14, suffer the little children to come unto me. And they just loved this, and they just hang around and watch him. And one day, a long, tall Texan drove in a big white Cadillac with big Texas Longhorns out on the front. He said, I want the most expensive Indian blanket you've got in the whole place. And the old West Texan merchant knew he only had one, so he went back, and he brought it out, and he dropped it on the desk, on the counter there, and he said, and dust flew, and he said, $100. He said, you don't understand, I want the most expensive one, the best one. Oh, that one. He took the same blanket back. He shook some dust off, brought it out, put it on the table, and he says, $500. The guy says, what are you trying to pull on me? I told you I want the most expensive, oh, that one. Oh, he took the same blanket back. Everyone observed this, and he folded it very neatly, got all the dust off, put it on the counter, and says, $3,000. Man paid cash and drove off in a cloud of dust. Everyone leaned forward to hear what his scripture was going to be. He said, Matthew 25:35, he was a stranger and I took him in. I love that one. I'm a stranger and you have taken me in, and I want to thank you for the opportunity to be here with you tonight to talk about the most important thing in our lives, which is our brain. And yet, in many ways, I'm not a stranger. My wife Jane grew up here, and her parents met here at Maryville College. And if they hadn't, then I would never have met Jane. She wouldn't exist. And we've had this wonderful marriage since 1971, married at New Providence Presbyterian Church. Well, I'm also a person who loves to learn. And Maryville College is a great place to learn, and even the city of Maryville and the Blount County area. And so I want to share with you a lot of information, and I'm really glad that Brian mentioned the shooting that occurred today, because later in the lecture I'm going to talk about John Hinckley's brain, who shot Reagan, and what's going on in the brain of someone who commits that kind of act. But we'll get there eventually. People ask me, how did you get into these brain lectures? Well, I'll do a very brief description. In 1999, I was sitting in my office there in Dallas, and Henry Estes, with whom I was serving on a healthcare board, appeared, and he said, I'm in charge of the program next year for the International Society for the Advancement of Humanistic Studies in Medicines. It's kind of Patch Adams docs from all over the world, and we come together at a ski resort every year. It was Banff 2 years ago, Zurich a year ago. Next year it's Aspen. We have very clinical lectures in the morning. We ski all afternoon, and we party all night. I said, this sounds like fun. He said, next year the subject is the brain. We have Michael Gazzaniga, one of the top cognitive neuroscientists in the world, from Dartmouth Hitchcock Medical Center. We have so-and-so from NIH, so-and-so from Mayo Clinic, and we'd like for you to lecture on the brain. I said, Henry, I know absolutely nothing about the brain except I have one. And I went home and told Jane. She said, that's never stopped you before. So sure enough, I took the challenge and I read 50 books on cognitive neuroscience. I basically gave myself another PhD in the brain, and I went over and interviewed neurosurgeons, neuroscientists at University of Texas. I started to say UT, but University of Texas, Southwestern Medical School, which is one of the few medical schools in the country which has 5 Nobel laureates. And I just sort of over-prepared, and I created this philosophical, ethical perspective on the mind-body equation, contrasting a more Hellenistic Cartesian dualism that separates mind and body, and has physicians looking at patients as very uninteresting appendages to very interesting diseases, over against a more Hebraic, holistic approach, because the Hebrew word for soul, nephesh, means all of who you are. And Harold Koenig at Duke University Medical Center has offered evidence that if a healthcare provider will think of you as a whole person and not just the appendix they have to take out of in room 103, it actually helps the healing process. So I have been now on a kind of a journey to help change medical education. However, it's already started long before I was doing that. So I got back, I gave the lecture for an hour, and then the professor from Robert Wood Johnson Medical Center, the head of biomedical ethics, gave a response for an hour, then I answered questions for 2 hours from docs from all over the world. And I got back to Dallas, and I found out that the head of continuing education for the whole AMA, the whole American Medical Association, was at that conference. He did the readout on the CEU evaluation. He said, Dr. Carl, you scored way above these medical school professors. And, you know, they were all bringing their trays of slides, and I had PowerPoint, and because he was there, I started getting invited all over the country. So I've been to Cornell, Carnegie Mellon, University of Arkansas School of Medicine for a Dean's special lecture to the entering class. And I've even given this lecture at Fort Sanders Medical Center, at the China Academy of Social Sciences in Beijing, just lots of places. And 2 other lectures have grown out of this: Faith, the Brain and Pain, and Brains, Cancer and Hope. But I'm only doing this one that is a medical school type lecture tonight. The other 2, tomorrow and tomorrow night, are a little bit different, and you've probably read about them. So let's get into this and begin seeing how this works. This is a summary, and I don't like to read slides, so you can read what's here. This is just an overview, literally, of how we're going to go through this talk tonight. That's what it looks like inside your head, by the way. There it is, the size of a coconut, the shape of a walnut, the consistency of chilled butter. I have a small version up here with me. I've had some of the sound people kind of going ooh and holding it. It's very, very squeezy and it's pretty small. This is just not to scale, obviously, unless you've made some really bad decisions in your life. And there it is. But that's what it looks like inside your head. Now, we know a lot about the brain, and I had to study all of this to get ready even for that first lecture, and I've been doing these since 2000. So the brain is the new outer space. I mean, it's inner space, but it's exploding in information. There's no way to keep up with all of it. You could go on WebMD right now, or even on just Google, and ask for the peer-reviewed articles on the right hippocampus in the last month, and you'll find 30 of them. That's how fast the information is coming out in neuroscience right now. So we know a lot about the different lobes, and I'm going to go into detail on several of these. We know about the different parts. In just a little bit, I'm going to talk about the corpus callosum, because there is a difference between male and female brains with corpus callosum, and it'll explain a lot to you when you hear it. We are also going to talk about the occipital region, which they call here the visual cortex. We're going to talk about the auditory cortex, prefrontal cortex. This says speech center, but that's actually the Broca's area and the Wernicke's area. Those two go together. We're going to talk about those. And just a reminder how much is going on in our brains. So I'm going to go now, get the screen blank, and I'm going to go to a video I've got here that's so cool. I just ran across this recently. And I'm just going to pull it up so you can see it. It's a different one. Here we go. It's called Firing Neurons, the Cell Dance. Okay, you can bring the screen back up so everybody can see.
A nerve cell or neuron. This neuron is shown 20,000 times larger as in reality. At this tremendous magnification, a hair would be 6 feet thick. These incredible organic chips function through electric signals. They control nearly everything we do, from thinking to moving muscles, from sensing to hearing, and even watching this video. The thin extensions at the top of the neuron are called dendrites. These dendrites receive signals from other neurons. As long as the inhibiting blue signals dominate, the neuron will remain silent. But as soon as the activating red signals dominate, an electric pulse is sent through the thick lower tube of the neuron. This tube is called the axon of the neuron. Neurons are not alone. The brains of a human contain 100 billion neurons. If we were to walk through a single human brain at this pace, it would take over 300 years to just take a glimpse at all the neurons.
Speed it up just a little bit. Don't blank me out yet up there. I'm going to take it to right about here.
We are now zooming in, up to a magnification of 20 million times. At this scale, a hair would be over a mile thick. Each neuron contains billions and billions of proteins. These proteins are tiny little machines, each designed to do a specific job.
Now, if that doesn't blow your mind, maybe this one will. And I'm going to pull it up here. Whoops, wait a minute, I don't want that. I want this. Okay, you can bring it up. These are actual neurons making synaptic connections with the dendrites. That's what's going on in your brain right now. Pretty amazing. This is like 20,000 times magnification. Okay, now we'll blank it for a second, and I will go back to my PowerPoint, because that's all the videos I have. I just wanted you to see those. Okay, slideshow from where we are. Okay, you can come back up. And I'm going to go right on past that one, and here we are. So you can see them up a little more closely here. I'm a Greek professor, so I got to tell you a Greek word, which is dendrite. Dendron is the word for tree in Greek. So many medical terms are Latin or Greek, and this is definitely one right there. I just want you to think for a moment about the fact that there are billions of neurons bouncing in your brain right now. Yeah? Billions. He said 100 billion in each brain. And, sometimes I'll look at somebody kind of on the front row and go, well, I don't know, Loudon, I think you need coffee. You only got millions going there, come on. But no, the point is there are billions of neurons bouncing in every one of our brains here in this room tonight, making trillions of synaptic connections. Just process that for a moment. Which means there are more synaptic connections going on in your brain, each and every one of our brains tonight, than there are stars in the Milky Way. In fact, there are more than multiple galaxies. So what does that mean? That means you can do way more than you think you can. Yeah? No excuses, do it. All right. So we're going to go through some of these ideas, just a reminder that we are a combination of nature and nurture. And because I am a theologian and a believer, I think we are made in the image of God, and that we are, as Psalm 139 says, fearfully and wonderfully made. So we are more than just neurons and neurotransmitters. On the surface, the brain doesn't seem like much, right? But it's incredible. As we go through it tonight, you'll begin to see how incredible. Just a reminder, this is how fast the brain is changing. Your brain, when you leave this room tonight, will be different from the brain you brought into the room tonight. Not because of this lecture, but because of the conversations you had with people here, the thoughts you're having. Your brain is constantly changing. It's constantly forming and reforming. So what is the difference between the mind and the brain? Well, the mind's kind of like the software and the brain's kind of like the hardware. So the mind is what the brain does. And it does all these different things. It's intellectual, it's emotional, it's faithful, it's decision making, and it's actually doing something. It's actually acting. So those are those 5 big things. Now, it also helps us teach, touch, and move. That comes from Augustine. St. Augustine was a rhetorician before he was converted to Christianity, and he coached Roman senators on their speeches. It was a big role to do that, and they got paid well, and then he was converted, but he took what he knew in rhetoric and brought it into homiletics. He wrote the first homiletics textbook, and he said that a great presentation of any kind, whatever it is, whether it's a sermon or a lecture or whatever, should do 3 things. It should teach the mind, it should touch the heart, and it should move the will. It should do all 3 of those things. So we're going to use that as a grid for us as we begin to think through this puzzle, which is our brain. We know that we are a combination of nature and nurture, so there's the influence there. But here's the intellect, the emotion, the volition. This is teach, touch, move. And what finally helped me understand how to create this lecture was the academic curriculum. It was every department, every discipline. So because the brain drives every part of who we are, it is like a full academic discipline. So we're going to go through all of these quickly, and we're going to start with memory, which is the hippocampus, which comes from the 2 Greek words, hippos, which means horse, and campus, which means sea. If you put hippopotamus together with hippos, you get hippopotamus, which means river horse, because of those 2 words. Here, I think it's very important to do the deep structural understanding of Joseph Campbell's Hero in 1,000 Faces, Carl Jung, Christopher Vogler, the writer's journey, all of which influenced the whole Star Wars series. All of the Star Wars series follows Joseph Campbell, Carl Jung, and Christopher Vogler. I think I have, there's my seahorse. That's your seahorse, which is the hippocampus. And we talk here about different kinds of memory, long-term and selective memory. But one of the interesting studies that had just come out by University of College London neurologist as I was doing this lecture was the study about London cabbies. How many of you have ridden in a London cab? Just raise your hand. Yeah. I don't know if you remember when you did that they didn't have any GPS. I don't know, it was a long time ago, obviously it was before GPS, but even today, no GPS used by London cabbies because they have to take a test. I asked one time, last time I was in England. I said, what's the test? He said, they give you 4 questions. And the questions are very simple. You pick up somebody at Gatwick or Heathrow, and here's the address. Name every street, every alley, every turn, every stoplight between the airport and that destination. That's one of the questions. There will be 3 other like that. If you miss one, you flunk and you have to start all over studying. So what London cabbies have done is they have memorized every street and every turn in the city of London, which is a pretty big place. Well, University of College neurologist in London studied these London cabbies and did non-invasive tests on them and found out that London cabbies have the most highly developed right hippocampus of anybody in the world. Why? Because they use it more than anybody else. Why right hippocampus? Because right hippocampus is for visual memory. Left hippocampus is for verbal memory. And I'm going to talk more about that a lot tomorrow when I talk about the brain technique for memorizing a lecture, a speech, or getting ready to ace an exam. Now, I want to mention about Jane's mother, who, Jane was at 1996, I'm trying to remember, in that range. What? Something. No, yeah, because she died in 2000, so this is way before that. Okay, so she was here in Maryville, living at Asbury, and Jane was with her at the moment she had a cardiac arrest, right there. And Jane called 911. They were very close. They came in. I mean, she was gone. They popped her back. She didn't come conscious for, how long was it? Week or 2? 5 days. 5 days. So when she came up out of it, she had lost the most recent 20 years of memory. It was gone. It was as if it hadn't happened. She didn't know any of her grandchildren. She didn't know her son had been governor of the state of Tennessee. She didn't know her husband had died. She had to go through all this grief process again. What year it was, soon after that, we moved her to Dallas, and she lived there until she died in 2000. But she began to repiece those things together as we showed her pictures and we told her stories. It's amazing about the memory. This is what your hippocampus neurons look, magnified many, many times. And tomorrow I'm going to talk about left and right hippocampus. I'm going to move now more directly to the perception, which is area of epistemology in the university. So we have the occipital lobe, which is back here. I was playing tennis one day with one of our sons in Dallas, and all my vision went away. It just disappeared, as if it, I could see little crinklies, but it was gone. Jeremy had to walk me up to the pro shop. Jane had to come pick me up, took me to the ophthalmologist, went into the reception, and I'm just sitting there, and I'm like, this is scary. This is great. My vision, this is unbelievable. My vision's gone. And we're waiting to see the ophthalmologist, and the receptionist leaned forward. She said, "Have you tried drinking some Coke?" And I go, "Well, no." And she said, "Try some Coca-Cola." Well, Jane went and bought me one. I drank it, and all my vision came right back. And I never even got in. I wanted to pay the receptionist. I never even got in, to see the ophthalmologist. I hadn't had I missed a couple of meals, and it was kind of like fasting a little too much, and I was exercising too hard, and I needed caffeine to get the neurons bouncing again. That's literally what it was. The olfactory bulbs are right here. In a minute, when we talk about memory, I'm going to say that's the most powerful way that you have an emotional response is through smell. So you were abused as a child, you get on an elevator, and someone has the same aftershave that your dad wore, and you don't even know why you're having this response. It's the power of smell. Now, the auditory cortex I want to mention because, and it's up over here, last spring, Jane said, "You are not hearing half of what I'm saying." And I go, well, maybe that's for one of two reasons. One, you may be mumbling. The other is, I'm not really paying attention to what you're saying. Well, neither of those came across very well. So she said, we're going to the audiologist at Taylor Hearing Center. And so we went, and a wonderful woman there named Natalie did all my tests. And she says, yeah, it's starting to go, but it's not real bad right now. And she says, tell me about your parents. And I go, well, Dad was deaf as a post. He died in 94. When he was 94, about 5 years ago, and my mother is getting really, really deaf. She goes, it's coming. Just get ready. It's coming. And the other thing is you need to start getting used to them earlier. I'll be 75 in October. She says, you need to start getting used to them. And then she added this. Oh, and by the way, did you know it helps your brain to be able to hear better? I said, whoa, you sold me there. I lecture on the brain. So I got my hearing aids, and I'm thankful to Taylor Hearing Center, and now I can hear better. But I'm going to tell you now one other fact about hearing, which is the corpus callosum. And the corpus callosum is different in male and female brains. And here's how it is. We guys, those of us who are males, have a skinny little corpus callosum. Women have a big, thick corpus callosum. All the cognitive neuroscientists talk about this. Now, the corpus callosum is the membrane that connects right and left brain. Now, we are, all of us, doesn't matter whether you're male or female, either left brain or right brain dominant. That's not really the point on this one. The point is that if you have a really thick corpus callosum, you can switch back and forth between left and right really fast. If you don't have a big, thick one, and males do not, we're stuck in one side or the other. You know, we're just kind of stuck there. Now, this is the reason that women are able to hear more of what's going on around than we guys. It's just a fact. Now, Jane used to say to me when I was still working, now at work today, you need to do such and such, such and such, and I'm just like, get my chin in your hands, slap me across the face a couple of times. I'm a very bright guy. I've lectured at Oxford and Cambridge, and I've done all this stuff. But send me an email, send me a text. And, it's a reality. It's a difference. I used to tell in premarital counseling to couples, you will say something to him, and you think he heard it, but he did not hear exactly what you said because he doesn't have a thick corpus callosum. Maybe it's because he's not listening. In some cases, that's the case. Now, I've done a test with this, and I've taken 10 women and put them around a round table, and I get them all talking at the same time. And all 10 will hear what the other 9 are saying. You put a guy in there? Stop! I can't keep up. Okay? So that's a huge difference in our brains. So be a little kind to us, women, about us not always catching everything. Now, I want to go one more point here, which is about how we hear and see what we want to hear and see. Each one of us comes into talk like this with his or her own filter, and it's different from everybody else in the room. So Tom Long, one of my colleagues in Humble Lakes, used to say, preaching is like pitching a big bucket of water over a room full of long-necked bottles. Not much is caught, because there's some truth to that. But I like to say, if you've got 400 or 500 people sitting out there, I think I'm giving one talk, but there are actually 400 or 500 different talks going on as I'm speaking, because you are hearing what you want to hear. I'll give you an example. One Sunday in Dallas, I was preaching on the three kinds of love: eros, philios, and agape. And I was just on eros, right? And I was quoting my old professor, George Arthur Buttrick, who had this wonderful phrase, the fine fire of erotic love. So I just threw it into the sermon, and I'm up there preaching away, and I just sort of even threw it out a couple of times. The fine fire of erotic love. After church, people shaking hands. This woman comes up to me and her little husband behind. She says, Dr. Carl, I really agree with you about that fading flower of erotic love. Now, I said fine fire, but she heard fading flower. So, people hear what they want to hear, So I always, when I'm doing this with medical school students or professors or even physicians, remind you to make sure that the patient is hearing what you're trying to communicate. Because you think you've communicated it well, but, Okay, now, these are all related to emotions, and we can get into that a little later. I want to just mention a little bit about the creative side, which now we're getting into the part of the university curriculum of arts and architecture and literature. And I think it's very important to remember, and all the scholars will talk about this, is for every fluent Mozart or Picasso who poured forth works effortlessly, there is also a Dostoevsky who rewrote his works numerous times, Thomas Mann, who struggled over 3 pages a day, Wagner, who worked himself up into a nearly psychotic frenzy, Darwin, who had no sudden epiphany of inspiration, but created endless lists of thoughts and images to understand how living processes yielded the plethora of plant and animal species in the natural world. And Charles Frazier rewrote Cold Mountain 20 different times. So, for most of us, inspiration is 90% perspiration. And that's really a fact. Now we're going to go into a couple more of these. Reason, which is now the departments of mathematics and logic. And now we are at the prefrontal cortex, which is the brain's parent. And this doesn't really fully develop until you're 25, okay? It's just the reality. The limbic system is taking over, running everything. And I'm going to get to the limbic system here in a minute. But it's the brain's parent that begins to help people make mature decisions. And actually, rental car companies and insurance companies understand this. That's why you can rent a car when you're 25, and insurance rates drop dramatically when you're 25. So it's called the brain's parent. This was, to me, the most surprising, and I should have known it probably from a biology class or whatever, but the reality that the brain really drives every part of our bodies. Our endocrine system, our lungs, our heart, our pancreas, intestines. The brain is driving all of that. That was a new thing for me when I first read it. Okay, now we have our emotions, and this is the psychology department. And here we have, in the limbic system, really all the different writers call it the brain's teenager. I mean, it's where all the big emotions are and reactions, and particularly if you're on social media, you're just, it's just all, just all worked up and whatever. This is where the whole feeling, passion, stress, everything. When I taught Greek at Union Seminary in Richmond, I always had 70 students from all over. It would be the middle of the summer, and we'd go 6 weeks, crash course, and I'd welcome to the boot camp of Union Seminary. You've heard Greek is hard. It's harder than you think. There are 70 of you. 10 will probably not be here at the end of the term. I always tried to be as pastoral as I possibly could, And one year, there was a gentleman sitting in the first chair, and I was getting ready to leave. He was the last one to leave. I said, "Could you catch the lights on the way out?" He didn't respond. I finally came up to him. He was in a psychotic case of some kind. He was frozen. And we had to call 911. I rode to the Richmond Memorial Hospital in the ambulance, and I'm going to get to do CPE with Greek. This was kind of crazy. And then we got in, and the neurologist gives him Valium, finally brings him up out of it, and he said to the guy, "What happened to you?" He said, "First day of Greek class, And he said, "You did this to him?" I said, "Well, the language, yeah, whatever." And he spent a week recovering, which means he was too far gone to finish with the class. But we found out that he had this conversion syndrome under stress in wrestling matches and all different kinds. So Greek brought up all that stress for him and caused him to totally freeze up. Now, I've got me on skis because our actor son, David, who's in New York now, came to this particular lecture at Aspen back in 2000, and he said, "Come on, Dad, let's do a blue slope." Well, I don't want to do anything but little green bunny slopes, but, we got to have the male bonding, so we're going to go out there. He's a college student. We go out, and we come to this tube, where you've seen it on the Olympics, where you fly up like this and like that, and he said, "Come on, Dad." I said, "I am not getting near that thing." And he said, "Okay, I'll see you down bottom." So I come over here, and I come to that ramp. It's a thrill of victory, agony of defeat ramp. And the prefrontal cortex is going, "No way, stay away." And the limbic system, "Come on, you got to try it." And back and forth, back and forth. This happens to us as adults way past 25, and sure enough, the limbic system, I fly off of that thing, I look around, I'm 30 feet above the ground, and I go, "Oh no, I have to go down," and I hit I was a garage sale down the side, so I wonder I didn't break every bone in my body. I lost the skis, I had one pole, and I got up, the whole mountain saw it, and I got up, and I picked up the one pole, and I realized, I knew I was going to have bruises, but I didn't break anything. And I just went, "Yes!" like that. And David goes, "That's the coolest thing I've ever seen, Dad." And we bonded right at that moment. And that's the last time I've ever on a blue slope. But the point I'm making is your brain will play tricks on you. It will revert you back to the brain's teenager to do something stupid that you shouldn't do. Now, the other part of the limbic system that I need to focus on here is that the amygdala. Now, the amygdala is the culprit for a lot of problems in our world. It's a little almond-shaped guy right there, and it's the fear, fight, flight part of the brain. Our problem in our world today, I believe, is we have overactive amygdalas because we're reacting too quickly to things. Our ancestors got the amygdala in there, and they were there. It was there because of a saber-toothed tiger in your face or a big snake or something, and they had to react. But today, it's different colors of skin. It's different politics. It's differences that cause us to go, "Rrr." I was lecturing at New College, Oxford, and the dinners were like seen from Chariots of Fire or Harry Potter, and we were all in our robes and everything. And but at breakfast, and when I was there, the Iraq War was going on, and someone just said, "Bush," and the whole room erupted, "Brrr, Bush." And I can take some right-wing Republicans and say Obama or Hillary, and "Brrr." We have overactive amygdalas in our society right now. We are reacting way too quickly with no patience. And it causes wars, it causes oppression, it causes and it causes hockey, or it causes you getting in trouble with an overactive amygdala. You all recognize that. So what we need is more patience. This is the Greek word for patience, makrothumia, which literally means long-tempered. What's the opposite of long-tempered? Short-fused, right? Way too much short-fused stuff going on in our social media, in our relationships, in our in our marriages, it's just way too short-fused right now, and it's the overactive amygdala. We need more Fred Rogers, right? Fred Rogers, who I'll do a shout out, I was president of Pittsburgh Seminary, and he was a graduate of Pittsburgh Seminary. It's a great question, trick question at a cocktail party if you're not talking about Fred. Name the Presbyterian minister in the 20th century who had more influence on more people than anybody else. And they'll go, Bryant Kirkland, Peter Marshall, George Buttrick. No, it's this guy right here. And he's been called by lots of people a global citizen. If we could figure out how to deal with the overactive amygdalas, we could get a Nobel Peace Prize. If anybody deserved a Nobel Peace Prize, it was Fred Rogers. Now I've got a few things about beliefs. Harold Koenig at Duke University Medical Center said something in a grand rounds I heard at University of Texas Southwestern Medical Center, that these are the things that happen to you if you are a regular attender of some kind of church. Look at that list. Dang, every church in the country ought to have that list on the back of their bulletin, because going to church or synagogue is good for your health. This one's even more interesting. These are not exact figures, but this just general trends. The white males attend church the least, then white females, black females. But look who has the highest suicide rate. It's the people who attend church the least. And black females who, thank God we don't have a caste system in this country, an official caste system like they do in India. But if we had one, black females might be at the bottom of it, have every reason to commit suicide, but they have the fewest suicides. I was talking to a member of our church who is African American about it, a woman, and she said, we've been through a lot and we're tough. That's what she said. We're tough. All right, now we're going to get to, should we say today, quit saying the devil made me do it and say my brain's to blame? Is that what we're supposed to say today? Let's take a look at John Hinckley's brain for a moment. In 1982, an expert witness in the insanity defense of Hinckley, who shot Reagan and 3 other men to impress the actress Jodie Foster, argued that a CAT scan of Hinckley's brain showed widened sulci and enlarged ventricles, a sign of schizophrenia, as an excusing mental defect. Now, the judge excluded the evidence, but the insanity defense prevailed after that. There is a lot of study by many different cognitive neuroscientists on what the criminal brain looks like, what the brain looks like of someone who did the shooting today in Nashville and many other shootings. It is a serious mental health issue. And I don't want to get into politics about gun control, but that's an issue also, and we all know that. Now, Larry Farwell has created a way that is better than actual fingerprinting or even DNA or lie detector tests with criminology a technique that he has created called Murmur. And what he is able to do with this is identify perpetrators by measuring non-invasively brainwave responses to crime-related words and pictures flashed on a computer screen. So if you committed this crime and you are the person sitting there like this or like that, there is no way that your brain will not say you know way more about that crime than anybody else. And it's being used now. It's called memory encoding related multifaceted electroencephalographic response. I have to take a running start on that like a pole vaulter. Don't worry, there's no test at the end about this, but this is really kind of fascinating for criminology. Now I'm going to get into language and action. When I am speaking to you now, it's just Wernicke's area of your brain that's firing right now as you're understanding and comprehending what I'm saying. The Broca's area is right here, which is when you want to say something and you want to produce speech. If you have a stroke in in either of these areas, you will not be able to understand what people are saying, or you're understanding but you're not able to speak. So we had a woman in our congregation in Dallas who had a stroke in the Broca's area, and she could understand everything we were saying, but she couldn't speak, so we'd have to write notes to her. So I said, when I visited her in the hospital once, you know, music is really powerful for bringing people back from strokes. And this is the whole field of neuroplasticity, by the way, that's just absolutely mind-blowing. And I've got the Kennedy Krieger Institute where they have taken paraplegics, and some of them are now winning Ironman contests. I mean, now if you have a total separation, I'm trying to remember, it's Matthew in Downton Abbey who had a spinal cord injury, and you thought that was it. I mean, we're going way back. But then he came back, remember? Okay, and Edward Taub at University of Alabama, Birmingham, you look at what happened, Congressman Giffords, and the movie, The King's Speech, is all about using music to bring somebody back. And by the way, an interesting little side note, historically, Colin Firth, the actor, this actor who played King George, actually had a speech impediment as a child. So he had to overcome it, and when he did, he became a really famous actor, and he really tapped into his own experience when he played King George in The King's Speech, that particular movie. I was teaching a homiletics course at Pittsburgh Seminary, and a woman who was a speech pathologist from Pitt came to take the course, and she raised her hand when I told about that, and she said, "Oh, I'm the one they brought Colin Firth to help him correct his speech impediment." And she was sitting in my homiletics class. It was amazing. And so back to the woman in our church. So I said, "Hey, let's try some music and see what happens." So I said, "It's Christmas time. Let's sing some Christmas songs." So we sang some different Christmas songs. The next time I came to visit her, she had a big smile on her face. And she started in, "Ingle Els, Ingle Els." And eventually all her speech came back. And it was the music that did it, the power of music in our lives. Okay, so this is a good summary right here of where we've been: memory, history, perception, epistemology, reason, which is math and logic, creation, the arts, body, and we've got the emotions and all the rest. Okay, remember, this is teach, touch, move, right? This is the goal. Now, I want to just do a little bit on the mind-body equation and try to move through this quickly. I'm not going to read all of what's on here, but the culprit is not only the Greek way of thinking about separating our mind and body, but it's also Descartes. Whereas Spinoza really thought of us in a much more holistic way. The Homeric heroes said we thought with our diaphragm. The word splankana is up there. Aristotle thought that thinking was done in the heart. Aristotle didn't say everything correctly. Alcmaeon was a disciple of Pythagoras, and he actually thought the brain was the receiving organ of all our senses. So there are some Greeks that were good, but I want you to look at the Hebraic understanding. That's in Hebrew, the Hebrew word nephesh, which means all of who you are. This is a quote. I'm just going to, I don't usually read quotes, but I'm just going to read through it quickly. The ancient Jew had no real interest in the psychological analysis and no conception of the division of the human personality into separate organs or faculties, each governing some particular phase of human psychic activity. Everything was part of the entire function of the entire personality. So that the conception of the mind as a special seat or organ of reflective thinking as distinguished from the heart as the seat of emotions would have been for the Hebrews almost unintelligible. Don't need that slide. Okay, now, the point I want to make, though, is that, that third point there. Each individual is a nephesh. You are a soul. It was one of my Old Testament professors at Louisville Seminary who helped all of us understand, you don't have a soul, you are a soul. So you need to think holistically. And so that when we get to talking about salvation, it's for all of who you are, not some little spiritual part, not this little Greek immortal soul. It's your whole being, so that salvation has this rich, full meaning to it. Okay, we're going to go beyond these. These are in Turkey. This is Asclepion is a hospital named after Asclepios, which is a Greek god. That's a diagram of it. This was the sacred road. You had to walk this 820 meters to get health care. And I actually measured once from the parking lot at Parkland Hospital in Dallas to the emergency room, and it was exactly 820 meters. So things haven't really changed that much before you get health care. They had a theater. This is 4th century BCE, where they did different kinds of experiments and such. Okay, let's go on to this slide. It's always interesting to remind physicians how they are seen. To me, it's interesting to see how they are seen in literature. Norman Cousins has a wonderful book, if you're interested in looking at more of this, called Head First. That's the title. Head First, The Biology of Hope. And Cousins puts it this way: almost every literary figure of any consequence, from Aeschylus to Walker Percy, has had something to say about doctors. To the writer, the physician is not just a prescriber of medicines, but the symbol of all that is transferable from one human to another, short of immortality. And what the world's great literature tells us about medicine, whether in Emily Bronte's Wuthering Heights, or Dr. Zhivago, or Faulkner, Hemingway, Steinbeck, is that few things are more important than the psychological management of the patient. The wise physician, says Cousins, while making a prognosis, does not confine him or herself solely to the virulence of a particular organism or to the nature of an abnormal growth. No, the wise physician makes a careful assessment and estimate of the patient's will to live and the ability to marshal all the resources of the human spirit that can be translated into beneficial biochemical changes. Thus, concludes Cousins, the science and the art of medicine converge at the point where physicians become concerned, as poets have always been, with the whole of the human condition. So, says Coleridge, the best physician is the one who inspires hope. Which brings us to our last slide for tonight. It's so important, and I'm going to talk about this more tomorrow, to be facially connected with other people, whether you're a physician with patients or wherever. When I did my PhD at Pitt in communication, rhetoric and communication, one class I remember hearing this fact that communication is 10% verbal, that's the actual words we say. It's 20% visual, that's the body language, and it's 70% facial. 70%. So we need to give people our faces and our attention when we're meeting with them. And I'm going to talk about the power of that when we deal with babies on the third lecture. There are 3 attacks, I often say, when there's somebody says, I've got cancer. There are 3 attacks. The first is the medical attack. The second is the prayer attack. The third is the positive attitude attack. Everyone around you, the person who has the cancer, positive attitude. All 3 are important. My dad beat lymphoma 3 different times. across 20 years, and he didn't die for another 20 years after that, and it was something else that got him. He just never gave up. I remember he had this wonderful Jewish oncologist, and they used to debate theology, and the oncologist would tease him about all kinds of stuff. So that third time that it had come back, the oncologist said, you better call the family in. This was 20 years before he died. Yeah, okay, so we all came in from all over the country, and we sat down. And the oncologist said, I'm really embarrassed, I'm sorry. It's funny to say I'm sorry, but we ran the tests again, and it's all gone. It's all gone. And I said, you mean I have to put the eulogy back in the file? And he goes, no, he might get hit by a bus tomorrow. And Dad says, I'm sitting here, guys. Okay. The point is, you never give up on someone. Now, pancreatic cancer, that's a tough one. Well, we just had a friend who died of pancreatic cancer 5 years after she was supposed to die. She was tough. It was hard. But she had 5 great years with her family, traveling and doing what she did. Obviously, Augustine's teach, touch, and move is important. If you're visiting with someone else, make sure they understand what you're saying intellectually, that they feel it, and then they're going to do something in response to it. That's the move. That's the volitional part. I want to just talk for a second as I finish up here about the Greek word for salvation. It's right there, soteria. Everybody say it with me. Soteria. Let me try one more time. Soteria. This is sigma, omega, tau, eta, rho, iota, alpha. Soteria. This is a huge word in ancient Greece and in the early church. It's not a little me and Jesus word. It's a big word. It's not about your little spirit. It's about your whole being. That you know, when you feel sin, you feel it in your body. Well, the same should be true when you feel salvation. When you experience God's salvation, you should be feeling it in your body. And it's not just about you, it's about the whole community, it's about all creation. It's an enormous word. And it is a synonym of the Hebrew word shalom. And the Arabic word salam, salam alaikum, alaikum salam. This is an enormous word. And I'm going to do a whole book just on soteria sometime. And a whole good way to look at salvation. Now, I'm going to finish with this one point. And that is Ephesians 2:10. We are created in Christ Jesus for good works. We are God's workmanship in Christ Jesus for good works. And the word for workmanship is just such a fun, wonderful word. And if you're going to work on a Sunday school lesson or you're going to work on a sermon on that, you go, oh, I can do this. God is the potter. We are the clay. God is shaping us. I get that. No. You got to look at the Greek word for workmanship. It comes from that good old contract word poieo. There are agapao, which is love, poieo, plerao, contract verb. It's a noun form. But it's the word from which we get our word poem. Now, if I didn't know some Greek, I wouldn't get the real deeper meaning there. And you know what that means? That means we are God's poems. Think about that for a moment. Now, be careful how far you go with the image. You know, some of us are sonnets, some of us are trite couplets, some of us are limericks. You know, we're all different kinds of poems, right? Some of us are free verse, whatever. But think about the fact that God is writing our poem every day. God is writing and rewriting and crossing out lines and just bringing our poem to life. So it's a beautiful image. So I'll finish with this old song. I think it's a Gaither song, because it really fits the brain. Remember I said at the beginning, your brain is going to be different when you leave this room tonight than when you came in. It's going to be different tomorrow than it was today. So here's the little song. God's still working on me to make me what I ought to be. Took him just a week to make the moon and the stars, the sun and the earth, Jupiter and Mars. How loving and patient God must be, for God's still working on me. That's your brain. God is working on your brain every day. And so are the people who love you, who are around you. Surround yourself with people who love you, and you will do wonders for your own personal brain. Thank you very much. Now, we're a little tight on time for questions, and so I'm supposed to go back around, and they're selling my novel, Assassin's Manuscript, which, by the way, has a fictional Maryville College professor, classics professor named Coleman Ashburn, but also the whole story is about an ex-CIA assassin who becomes a minister in Maryville, Tennessee. And then he gets pulled back to his old world of espionage and murder. It's Dan Brown meets Daniel Silva kind of story. Okay, so I'm supposed to go around and sign some books, but I'm going to be there to answer questions also. So bring your individual questions, and I look forward to sharing with you. Tomorrow, after the lecture at 1 o'clock, I'll have more time to answer some questions for just a little bit here in the room, and then also tomorrow night. So thank you again for coming. Take care of your brains. They are so important. This is a little 3-pound thing there in your head, but it is so important for your own mental and physical health. And we'll see you in a little bit later. Okay.